Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Steve Breach coming to you here today. I'll talk a little bit about WCW. I made a video yesterday about WCW Uncensored 1995. I gave my thoughts on it. I made that video after watching one of Jim Nye's old videos where he basically called WCW 1995 one of the worst WCW pay per views of all time. Um, and after that, my brain started thinking. I did a little bit more research, watched a little bit of wrestling last night, and I really came across what I think the worst WCW pay per view of all time, and it is from the uncensored pay per view line. But I think honestly, it's from the next year. I think Uncensored 1996 definitely is the worst WCW pay per view of all time. It is main evented by the Doomsday cage match. A Doomsday cage match was invented to end Hulkamania, a part of the huge storyline of you know, Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage coming into WCW and basically all of the heels coming together to say that they need to end the Hulkamania. The main group, which was led by the Dungeon of Doom and Kevin Sullivan. Kevin Sullivan, to me, honestly, he was the booker of WCW. He was a guy that was in great power there. He was working under Eric Bischoff. Kevin Sullivan, to me, as a wrestling fan that was new to WCW, was definitely the smallest. It was the just a wrestler that didn't make sense to be going up against Hulkamania. I understand that he had these powers and he was like the leader of this group that was bringing in the likes of, we saw Kamala, we saw Earthquake. All of these names from Hulkamania past that came in and basically lined up one after the other to do these jobs for Hulk Hogan. And that's basically what we were watching WCW for at the time. But this is a match in the history, the storyline of Hulkamania and Hulk Hogan that just does not make any sense to me. In order to find a way to defeat Hulk Hogan in a match, they thought they were going to build a triple tiered steel cage match that I don't even know was a ring. The whole thing seemed like it was just chain link, built from the bottom to the top. The whole thing kind of seemed like it was ready to fall almost at any time. None of the workers in the match were really prepared to be taking bumps. Nobody wanted to take a fall during that match, even though at one point they're fighting onto the outside, and Kevin Sullivan's hanging on to the scaffolding, making it look like he's about to just slip and fall off of there. And he's just whoa. Same thing about trying to make it seem like I was going to fall off this railing or something like that. I don't know. As a whole, the pay per view from top to bottom just really didn't come together and build a good show. I can remember watching this show, and I'll give it to him. The first match of the night, Conan versus Eddie Guerrero for the WCW United States Heavyweight Champion. That was a great match. It reminded me a lot of when I talked about the SummerSlam the other day, the Hakushi versus 1-2-3 Kid, where it just gets down to like some really fast action, and you're like, man, we are in for some really good wrestling today. From there, we go to the Belfast Bruiser going up against Lord Steven Regal. The Belfast Bruiser would go on to become Fit Finley. This is just like a bash 'em, smash 'em kind of match. These guys are punching each other in the face really as hard as they can. It almost comes down to like wondering if these guys hate each other or have any kind of like problems. It's just stiff the whole way through. By the end, Lord Steven Regal has his I'm not even sure if they're a new tag team and they're just coming together. But his partner comes down for the Blue Bloods and just gets involved. They end up throwing this match out and calling it a disqualification, which really doesn't make sense with the Uncensored brand. The whole thing was supposed to be that the referees are only there to count the 3 count. Nothing was going to be edited out of this show. There was no rules. Anything goes. And yet again, second year in a row, we have a match end in disqualification. From there, we go to Colonel Robert Parker going up against Medusa. That was a really short match. Medusa and Colonel Robert Parker, a male versus female match, was happening because Medusa, after coming to WCW, she threw the title in to the trash can on Nitro, and then it was kind of like, what do we do from here? So they really shotgun her in a wedding to be going up against Colonel Robert Parker. They're not in a wedding, like they're going to have a match then. They're actually going to get married. And then all of a sudden at the wedding, she's jumped by Sherry. And I don't know if Sherry and Robert Parker had a relationship before that, or she just was jealous and she wanted to have Colonel Robert Parker. They start fighting. That ends up with them having a match at Nitro, and then here comes the pay-per-view, male versus female. Medusa's going to go out there and she's going to get a piece, and Robert Parker gets taken down for a 2 count, and then basically he just like rolls it over and just sits on Medusa. 1, 2, 3, very short match. Really didn't need it. Really didn't make any sense. At one point, Robert Parker picks up Medusa and is like doing like the spinning thing with Medusa over her head, but then just like puts her down and he's all dizzy. I think they were doing everything they can to not have male versus female violence in this match at that time. But I don't know, it just sucked. We had the Booty Man going up against DDP. The Giant defeated Loch Ness, which is actually Giant Haystacks from the UK fame. He had come over for the match. I don't know why they didn't put Loch Ness into the Doomsday Cage, because in my mind, before I watched it, I thought it was like 20 dudes in there in my mind. It really was that bad that Hogan was just like, I can beat everybody and anybody all at one time. Sting and Booker T defeated the Road Warriors in a Chicago street fight, but what everybody came to see that day was the Doomsday Cage. It basically was 3 tiers on top of each other, and the top tier where the match started, it was Hogan and Savage against Ric Flair and Arn Anderson. And in your wrestling mind is like, Arn Anderson and Ric Flair are a hell of a team. They're 2 members of the 4 Horsemen. They can handle their own. They know how to cheat to win. Anything can happen. What happens if they just beat Hogan or Savage up there at the top? I don't know, but they fight their way through those 2 dudes. There's no pinfall. There's no like, we beat this level. It's just all of a sudden they open up a trap door and they take forever to lower themselves as they drop from the first level, well, it's the 3rd level, to the 2nd level. Why Arn Anderson and Ric Flair don't attack them at that point, I don't know. I don't understand. They just kind of like just watch them, and then once they drop down and they're on the next level, they don't like, hey, we're gonna do the same thing and we're gonna go down there and we're gonna make it 4 on 2. They just let them drop down there, and then once they achieve the middle level, basically it's Meng, the Barbarian, Lex Luger, all inside the 2nd level. Kevin Sullivan's is in there as well. That one's a little bit different because there's no drop down to the bottom, because they didn't put anybody in the bottom. Just everybody was in the middle and the top. They find, I guess they kind of like find trap doors and they go out the sides of the 2nd level. Then as they're beating up the heels, they fight down the staircase and they actually walk away from the Doomsday Cage. Doomsday Cage was built like in the middle of the entrance, like where the Tron would be, like I don't know what the WCW Tron's called, so it's like where the Titantron would be at the top of the ramp. It really wasn't lit well, even for TV. I hated I would hate to think about what a fan in Tupelo, Mississippi, who bought a ticket to that thing would sit and watch. It doesn't matter if you're in the front row. It doesn't matter if you're in the last row. It just probably wasn't really built for what they were doing. But even though the match is called the Doomsday Cage match, they make their way out of the Doomsday Cage and they make their way all the way down to where they're fighting in the normal wrestling ring, right there in the middle of the stadium. So if they're gonna end the match there, why didn't they just start it there? And it doesn't make sense to me at all. And like it had to have been planned. That's where they were going. Once they make their way to the actual ring, is where your actors, which are Z Gangster and what is this? What did they call him? The Ultimate Solution. The Ultimate Solution was Robert Swenson. He was an actor. He was in. I know he was Bane in one of the Batman movies, but I don't really know why they decided that they needed him for this match. This guy, his arms were huge. It really didn't make sense to me. He looked like a wrestler. He just didn't really move like a wrestler. He really couldn't do anything other than just like swing his forearms and just hit. Z Gangsta, of course, is Zeus. He was in the Hulk Hogan movie. No Holds Barred. He was a wrestler where he wrestled at, didn't he wrestle at SummerSlam? He wrestled at Survivor Series. He was named to be in the actual Royal Rumble when then people thought it was actually going to be the main event of WrestleMania 6. They thought that they were basically going to make this movie and have like a year-long storyline. Oh, and then he also had a pay-per-view where it was the match in the movie. Where it was the tag match inside the steel cage with Hogan and Beefcake. So they got a good run out of it, but he had left. I mean, I bet you he had to have been surprised when either Eric Bischoff or whether Hulk Hogan called and basically said that we want you to come back for one more wrestling match. It didn't really make sense, but they haven't even been in the Doomsday Cage. But once the match actually moves to the actual ring, they make their way out of the back to actually make their entrance into the match. They get into the ring. It's Luger, it's Z Gangsta, Ric Flair, and the Ultimate Solution. And basically, they lower a cage. Why is there another cage? They're supposed to be fighting in that cage that was built for this match, and now you bring him to the ring, you lower this down, and the ending of this match ends up being that, Lex Luger, I see him as a bad guy. He's in the Dungeon of Doom, but they're really saying he didn't really want to be in this match. I don't know if maybe Lex just didn't want to end Hulkamania. He wants to be a bad guy, but doesn't really care if there's a Hulk Hogan around. But Jimmy Hart, who is his manager of the Faces of Fear, put him into this match. And so why Lex doesn't just punch Jimmy in the face and just like, hey, you help me, I don't work for you, kind of deal. But Lex is in this match. He puts on a loaded glove, and it's WCW all over. He goes to punch, realizes he's actually gonna punch Savage, the wrong guy. Then Savage doesn't have time to get out of the way, so he just drops his punch. Then he picks it back up again once Savage is down, and just punches the other heel in the head. They never really explained why they did it. They just put all the blame on Luger for the reason why they lost. And then another funny thing is, as Hulk and Savage are leaving the cage, they have to be reminded, like, the match doesn't end until you pin somebody. You can't just walk away. And so Savage has to dive back into the cage, get a pinfall as fast as can be, 1, 2, 3, and they're able to walk out of there as the victors. In my opinion, Uncensored 96 is a way worse show than Uncensored 95. I think it's one of the worst put together shows of all time. I heard Kevin Sullivan on an interview asked, you're the booker, why'd you book this shit? and he basically said that Hulk was a very hard person to work for, and he thought that if he let Hulk have this, Hulk would trust him, and down the road, when they needed Hulk to do something, that Hulk would believe in him. And like, hey, I did this for you. I really need this to fit the picture of what's going on. And getting Hulk to, not say, this doesn't work for me, brother, is always one hell of a thing to do. So, I don't know. There's no really way to tie this together and end it. I think Uncensored 96 is the worst WCW show of all time.